welcome. Let me just get this adjusted properly and we'll be off and running. Okay. Welcome to the First Nations Housing Webinar Series, 12th out of 12, last one. We're working with a handicap today, but it looks like it's going to work. My name is Jan Eeks. I've been your host for all of these. Today, the handicap is the storm that went through Thunder Bay and just hit Montreal. So our tech team is out of whack, and Robert and I are running this thing by the seat of our pants. But that's what you do in a First Nations community when everything falls apart. So we'll get in with it. I'm going to be following closely to a script in order to get things in on time, because if I just let myself talk, it'll go forever and ever. Robert, will you chime in and let me know that you can hear me properly? This is working.
Yes, I can hear you, Yannick.
Okay.
Everything on my end. Good morning.
Okay, Robert. Great, thank you. Just needed to double check on these kind of things. So we've held 11 webinars in the series and 18 housing work sessions at the First Nations Housing Conference 2025 in Thunder Bay just last week. Not to mention the Builders Challenge with a special angle of involving youth in mold restoration. So all of that went on in a very unsettling backdrop of provincial elections, upcoming federal election, and trouble on the southern border with Trump. So what is going on? These uncertain developments could have serious impacts on all our short-term and long-term planning and funding of housing work. So here we are finishing a conference, figuring out what we're going to do, getting our plans in place. But the background is really, it all came so fast that no one was prepared to talk about a plan B. What if everything gets put on hold or cut back? What do we do with housing? Well, I've been asked to provide both the first and the last webinars in this series. So as I heard about innovative building programs, renovation and maintenance programs, trades training, it dawned on me that we do have tools for Plan B. We do have tools to secure our housing stock in troubled times. Now, I'm going to draw from several of these seminars to show you that we have more housing resources than you thought. I'm going to stick to my slideshow, as I said, to avoid talking for too much. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll run through the whole presentation, and then we'll handle your questions afterwards. Robert will be following the chat box if something's going on, and I'll try to follow my PowerPoint. So let me just get the PowerPoint up and running. So I've got to move some things out of the way to do that. And there we go. And is it up? No, I got to share the screen. That's the nice thing about having a second computer running. I can see what you see. And we do a share. We always struggle with this every time. Sharing screen. There we go. Okay, we're up and running. How to secure your housing stock in a time of political and financial uncertainty. It's tough enough to do that when times are good and we're just doing the programs and running through. I want to define active housing stock just to use it for this presentation. What I call active housing stock is housing that is occupied. And that means it could be a comfortable house, an overcrowded house, a healthy, dilapidated house, or a house that is healthy or not healthy for its occupants. It's occupied, whatever condition it's in. That's the housing stock. You may have some other categories of buildings standing around, but this is what I want to secure, is the buildings that we can occupy. In your housing stock, you all know, input is building new homes. We build new homes, the housing stock grows. We demolish uninhabitable buildings, the housing stock shrinks. Some balance between growing and shrinking is supposed to fit the best we can to our population. We have overcrowding because we have more going out than coming in. Now, in between the front and the back end, Houses are built and they slowly die. We know that. There's nothing new. Eventually, a house will be useless. It needs to be torn down. However, one study, now this was brought forth by Gail Lawlor in the webinar number 7, and I'm going to mention a lot about the webinars at the conference. So if you have access to the conference, you may want to go back and look at those sessions. Well, there's two things we have. We have the sessions in the conference, and we have 12 webinars. So Gail Lawlor in webinar number 7 talked about a study where they studied new houses and how long they last. And all of a sudden they discover that many, many new houses were being taken out of service, considered dead, after only 10 years after construction. 10 years and they were gone. That does not build housing stock. So that's a problem that we really have to take into account as we move forward. Now, why do so many new houses have a shorter lifespan than many older homes? Now, sometimes it's poor construction. Sometimes it's cheap windows and doors. Often that's cheap windows and doors. Most of the time, it's something that Gail calls incomplete energy conservation construction. And I'll explain that in just a minute. But incomplete energy conservation construction, everything we do now is based around energy conservation, but there are some problems with that. Let's back up and take a look at Grandpa's house. It may still be standing, Grandpa's house. You may still have people living in that thing. Grandpa's house had very little insulation. It had a wooden stove for heating. It had a lot of cold air drafts that were driven by the wind and the wood stove chimney. Now, the fresh air drafts kept the house quite dry. There was no mold or rot in Grandpa's house. And Grandpa wore heavy clothes indoor all winter. That was part of the price he had to pay. Is it was winter and he stayed bundled up whether he was indoors or out. Now if the roof didn't leak and he didn't run out of wood, not much went wrong in Grandpa's house. Wasn't necessarily terribly comfortable, but it housed him right through the winter. Now let's take a look at new construction. As we go on, you'll see sometimes the type on my slides gets very small, and I left it that way to guide me. I'll read it for you, but to guide me so that I don't get lost, because I want to keep this online so you follow the trend of thinking. Now, new construction has a lot of money-saving insulation in it, and it should have sturdy, energy-efficient windows and doors, should have. Now, it definitely has a vapor barrier that Grandpa didn't have, a vapor barrier that prevents household humidity from creating ice and rot inside the walls. That's necessary because of the insulation. The insulation stops the heat from going out, so the outside of the house is colder in a new house than it was in Grandpa's house. If we let the moisture get there, it causes ice, frost, condensation, rot inside the walls. Now, it should have a fresh air machine, an HRV, ERV. That's in fact required in all new construction, most of Canada. But it should have, not all the new construction does have this, but it should have this fresh air machines. And the basic thing that the fresh air machine does is it reduces humidity indoors, improves indoor air quality for the house and its occupants, because the air vapor barriers blocked all those cleansing drafts. So we stopped the drafts, we're more comfortable. We've got a lot of pollution piled up inside the house. That's why it requires the fresh air machine to get rid of the household pollution and to bring in fresh air. And the house requires regular maintenance to keep this economical and comfortable modern house functioning and healthy. Without it, they degrade fast, sometimes as fast as 2 years. And those last two, the fresh air machine and maintenance, are the two traps of energy efficient construction. For years and years, I've been with us, Gail has been with us for about 30 years. Over 40 years, I've been working on building energy efficient construction, and we all concentrated at the beginning on insulation. And then we realized we had to do more than that. We had to control the humidity. So we said, okay, insulation with a vapor barrier. And it took us a long time to get around to saying we need fresh air machines. And it's still not done all the time. Now, incomplete energy conservation construction is when one of these elements is not there or not working. Failure to have a properly functioning fresh air machine is the greatest cause of mold and wood rot, the major cause of premature death of a house. Yes, that HRV that you kind of just didn't want to bother with it. Some lady told Gail, oh, I thought that was an air conditioner. I never turned it on. Other people never put them in. In another health study that Gail was involved in, and you can hear about this in webinar number 7, there was a community where 47 fresh air machines were sent to the community. And when she went up there to do testing of how well this was all working, only 6 were installed and operated. 41 of them were either not out of the box or were installed and not turned on or not kept clean. They weren't working. 6 out of 47. And she went through the health of the house and the health of the occupants. Watch her webinar and you'll see a lot of details on that. So now we need to do some understanding of your housing stock, what you call your housing stock, or what I call the active housing stock. You're all aware new houses being built, old houses being buried all the time, but let me show you a chart that looks at housing stock in a little different way. And I used this chart in the seminar I gave at the housing conference, so it may be familiar to some of you. Here's the growth of housing stock. Let's say we're going to build 2 new homes a year. You may be building a lot more, a lot less. My 0 at the bottom is not 0 houses in the community. It's a starting point. Whether you've got 400 houses or 4,000 houses in the community, we'll call that 0, because I want to see how do we increase the growth of housing stock on top of that without even considering the condition or what's going on with what's behind. Let's just see how we can try to make it grow. So we say we're going to build 10 new houses on year 1, and that'll add 10 houses to the housing stock. Year 2, another 10. And every year we build 10 houses for the first 10 years. And that's going great. What happens? We have 100 additional homes in the community. Now, if these houses are lasting only 10 years, what happens when we build 10 new houses? Look what's going on the left. 10 houses just rotted out at the same time we built 10 new houses. So in terms of a chart showing growth of housing stock, it's 0. Red line, flat line. Okay, so every year we're going to build 10 more. And every year 10 are going to fall out because they're being demolished on the back end of the housing stock. And if this scenario is just balanced out of 10 new ones and 10 old ones, you have no new growth of housing stock. It just doesn't happen. So this is something that we have to think about. It's not, this is a very simplistic image, but it's an image that drives home that we have to really pay more attention to that housing stock behind us, because here we got 0 additional homes in the second 10 years. And if we kept going, it's the same story. You don't get that beautiful projection of, hey, we're going to have 400 new homes in 40 years. Yes, you may have 400 new homes. You may only have 100 of them still surviving if they're not dealt with properly, not built properly. So we need to really look at what is going on in the housing stock that already exists. Now, securing your housing stock, we got to build them faster than we bury them. But if new building stops or slows down, we will have fewer and fewer active houses, which means that the houses being demolished will exceed the houses being built. We'll have fewer houses each year if we stop building, and that's going to increase your overcrowding without even making any new babies. Just the housing will start to disappear if we don't come in and help it out. Now, the secret reserve that we have in existing housing stock, that secret reserve is in the housing stock that is today prematurely dying. Now, this is not something that's going to help you in the long term, because it's someday, even if we get everything lasting as long as possible, every building we built lasts 50 years. Well, at some point, those 50-year good houses are going to start being demolished as well. And we're back to the same type of chart. But maybe at that point, we have caught up with the housing shortage. Maybe we're in control of the situation. So we have to put a freeze on housing shortages at the same time that we anticipate a freeze on new construction. How? By extending the life of existing houses. We may need to shift our concentration. What are the best opportunities for securing your housing stock? Well, the most expensive housing is to build a brand new home. And that's what we want to do. If we can build them and make them last a long time. Large scale renovations are only undertaken when they're cheaper than building a new home. If it's going to cost more to renovate, we'll demolish it. If we can get a good house again from renovations, that's worth undertaking, but not a lot of that goes on because it's expensive. Major maintenance work, like a new roof, new plumbing, full electrical change, that costs less than full renovations, but still, we even have some trouble getting there, but we'll talk about that one in terms of funding. Regular maintenance, we don't do as much as we should of that. Things are not being kept up to snuff. I mean, we need to do maintenance and fix things before they become more major. Preventative maintenance is not being done at all. Preventative maintenance is the absolute least expensive way to keep housing stock healthy, both for the health of the house and its occupants. And that's what my whole thing is about today. I'm going to show you a way to use preventative maintenance to dive into the existing housing stock and make it last through the hard times that we're having right now. The opportunities, major maintenance, when it's required to save a home. In webinar number 2, go back and look at that one. You're here in the webinar series, you get direct access to it. Wilbert McLean of FNHC detailed limited financial opportunities for major repair through RRAP and Section 95. He points out some funds that you didn't know could be used for repairs. But he also pointed out there's not a lot of money available. So if you need to look at that, look at it quickly. Regular maintenance. Now this is getting much less expensive. It's not as glorious, but for regular maintenance, we may need to shift funds where possible. We're spending there where it will cost less to keep more people housed. Replacing a faucet, fixing a window. When these things don't get fixed, the housing degrades quickly and it rapidly reaches the point where we abandon the house. I got to mention, I talked with one of the professors that were at the conference with the students that we brought in for skills training, and he was an electrician. He talked to me about a program that I'd never heard about, and I don't know how widespread it is, but a contractor community participation project in Slate Falls First Nations community. It's a remote community. And what they have is that when he would sign a contract to go up and wire a new house or 10 new houses or 2 new houses, in that contract would be 1 or 2 or 3 days extra where he still getting paid, but extra where he would join with a member of the community who had lined up all kinds of electrical maintenance things that needed to be done. Change an outlet, change a light fixture, getting the electrical wire to be replaced or fixed. So he would go around with this community partner who would drive him quickly to all the right places, wasting no time, coming in, getting out. And the community did not have to, 1, it was organized so he got maximum use out of this guy. 2, you don't have to pay for his flying into the community or flying out. He was already there on another program. Great use of professionals that come for a short period of time to the community. Keep them for a day or 2. It costs far less because there's no transportation or anything else. Now, most occupants of houses don't have the tools or the skills to do serious maintenance repairs. Some do. So usually this falls to the band to do it. So training and hiring maintenance staff could become a new priority if we're not building new houses or new housing is slowing down to the point where we're losing more houses than we're keeping. So if we can get the maintenance there to hang on to a house through the tough times so it doesn't get dead, demolished, that maintenance staff with not very much work could do it. But maintenance staff often are sitting around because they don't have material to work with. They don't have a communication system to know who needs maintenance, or people have put in maintenance requests for a long time, but they're sitting and waiting. Let's attack that. Let's make it work, and you'll be extending the life of the house. Now let's look at what I think can really help to get us through this, the preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance reduces the need for maintenance repairs, okay? It's simply not in our habit to do this, but could be the secret weapon to seriously securing your housing stock through this crisis. Well, what can this accomplish? Well, tell me, what does changing the oil for your pickup accomplish? That changing the oil is preventative maintenance on the pickup truck. If you don't change the oil, the pickup truck will die prematurely. If you keep the oil changed, keep the brake fluid up, do all those little maintenance things, clean the gas filter, clean the air filter, you know all that. And you know it makes your car last longer. And so now in a house, doing all this can stop the mold and the unhealthy indoor air problem immediately. Now, all occupants, where I said earlier, very few occupants are equipped to do maintenance, but all occupants can do some of the most important preventative maintenance tasks. They just need some education and some very basic hand tools. This kind of training can work in a community center. Okay? We can take this into every home. If we want to do that, we need to mobilize the energy and creativity of the community's youth. You think that's a crazy idea? You can't get them off their butts? Well, we tested this at the First Nation Housing Conference 2025 with 14 First Nation youth from the Thunder Bay area who came in and learned how to remediate serious mold problem. It looks like this will work. They got excited, they were competent, they learned what needed, and they could even teach it at the Builders Challenge to the participants that didn't get that training. So, preventative maintenance calendar. There was given out at the conference a preventative maintenance calendar for First Nations housing. I wrote this a long time ago, and we put it together for them. It's in a big brochure. It shows you preventative maintenance week by week for 52 weeks. So you can actually get a hold of Robert at the community, at the First Nations Housing Community, and get a copy of this, either in PDF or in print. Check with that. I think Robert will be giving his email in the chat so you can run it down. Let's just look at sort of what I'm talking about. This is just a teaser. And we detailed much more in webinar number 1. Go back and watch webinar number 1, you get more details. Cleaning the fresh air machine, the HRV, the filters, the core, the outdoor hoods. Cleaning the filters, you need a vacuum cleaner. You pull it out, you vacuum it, you put it back. The core, you take it to the bathtub, you take the shower, and you hose it down in both directions. You let it dry, you put it back. Outdoor hoods, you turn the machine off, go outside with the vacuum cleaner or a brush and clean off the outdoor hoods. That can be done, but that is those 3 chores are the major thing that make the HRVs not work properly because the air can't flow. And when they're not used, they don't work properly, they're not used, the pollution, including the humidity, stays in the house. Educate occupants to the health benefits of a functioning HRV for both the house and the people. Okay, lubricating door locks with the right lubricant for cold climates. I don't know how many keys I've seen that can't get out of the lock or can't turn the lock because things are frozen up, partially because there's too much humidity in the house, gets into the lock and freezes there. There are lubricants, special lubricants for locks that can do that. And you can see some details of that back in my webinar number 1. Lubricating windows against frost lockup. Windows are often broken because of the screwdriver jammed in to break the frost. If you put paraffin wax on the sliding window frame, even on the ones that open with a opening closing mechanism, the paraffin wax will stop the water from sticking when it ices up. You can much more easily keep your windows functional. Spacing boxes and furniture from cold walls with strapping to avoid mold. Don't let any cardboard box sit against a cold surface. Space it out just with a piece of wood. Just something as simple as that stops mold. The air can flow. Sniff out and clean up mold. If it smells musty, find out where it is and clean it. Don't sit and wait for it to get worse. Mold on the surface can be cleaned up easily. When it gets into the structure, we have to start destroying walls. Secure the upper hinge of outside doors with long screws. When the door was installed, it had tiny little screws from the manufacturer. They should have pulled out those screws in the top hinge and put 3-inch long screws that go all the way into the structure of the wall. Even if you do that for one single screw, pull out one screw of the top hinge, drive in a 3-inch long screw, that door will never sag again. And then it won't jam. Then you won't break the handle trying to force the door open. And when warm weather, shingles start to get old, the shingles, they curl up. And when they're just starting to curl up, they're not bad yet, just curling up a little, we can put a little bit of roofing cement under that corner and push the tab back. We need heat to do this. Can't do that in the winter. But you can push those corners back down and get years more life out of that roof. We can extend the life of it. Now, a 52-week preventative maintenance calendar was given out at the conference. If you go to my website, yanix.com, on the left-hand side of the opening page, you see it says weekly maintenance for your home. That is the 52-week calendar. Every week that changes. Every week you look at it and it says, take a look at this, take a look at this. Just inspect something. Sometimes you need to clean a filter. Sometimes it tells you what to do. Most of the times it tells you what to look at to see if it's a problem. And if you want to see larger questions by the 4 seasons, we have seasonal home improvement tips that relate to spring, summer, winter, fall. Doing these can often stop problems in the season to come. So all of that is available to you free of charge. So that's my website. You also find that in this maintenance calendar, which is the same as the other one, but this one has hot links to a lot of more help on the subjects. How simple can the toolkit be for a home residence just for preventative maintenance? It could be as simple as this: a multiple head screwdriver, a knife, a scraper, a hammer, and some sort of pliers. That's not much, but with that little bit, you can do an awful lot of work. That scraper, which is also a pry bar, is used for getting behind molding on windows and doors. If there's a problem, let's open up, see what it is. Maybe it can be fixed easily. Okay, so we're not talking about needing to have humongous toolkits or lots of training. We're talking about some good information training, but I'm going to see getting the youth involved is the key to the whole training and information process. See the conference seminar, the last one on Thursday on the technical section, Youth Skills Training at the First Nation Housing Conference 2025, where you saw all the kids and we talked about what we did. But you also saw something amazing with those kids, something going on. We teach basic skills in grade school special project or community special project. We can do that. Teenagers can do that. We had these kids for 2 days at the conference. We taught them how to do rot remediation under a toilet. That's a big job. Little preventative maintenance jobs can be taught at grade school. I made a video for Natural Resources Canada 30 years ago, where we taught 4th graders, 3rd graders, how to do energy conservation, like turning off lights and not running the dishwasher unless it's full. Little details like that. And it worked. They sent a video out to every grade school in the country, and all the parents complained, why is my kid turning the light off all the time? Okay. Encourage youth to make video clips for Snapchat, Facebook, whatever they're on. This is a very interesting thing. These kids are expert at making videos. You don't have to train them. You don't have to buy them equipment. And when they're making these videos, they could make videos of how to wax a window. They can make videos of how to put that long screw in the door. They can shoot each other and get involved in doing this. That gives them something to shoot that's worthwhile. And they can share that on the community website. If you get involved, if you as the leader of the community help support that, even just by giving them a place to show off, and share it with other communities, because the web has no boundaries. So if we get it going, even in a small way, in 3, 4, 5 communities combined together, that makes an awful lot of video, an awful lot of talk about, geez, I should do that to keep my house alive, to keep the health in the house. Youth and showing other people along the way how to do it. That can be a whole thing. The youth are experts at making videos. They love to share what they can accomplish. They have their own equipment. They have their own distribution system and would love to use yours. There's no government program needed. If you want to finance a little bit, you could finance some specific training at the community center, at the grade school. Then prizes, give them prizes of some sort, and recognition for good videos, which help the community. Recognition may be the biggest one. If they become the viral hero of the day, helping grandma to get her window open, this is a great video. All First Nation communities can cross participate. Let's take preventative maintenance viral. For the health of the house and the health of the occupants, go for quality before quantity when you can. A long-lasting house will house more people longer than two houses that fall apart. As we become more aware of the critical importance of longevity of homes, we need to look at the cost efficiency of installing better products that last longer, such as fiberglass windows, which you all say, oh, that's too expensive, but it's more durable, less affected by extreme cold. They can put up with that screwdriver trying to open the window better, and is generally more energy efficient at the same time. The HRVs, they now have HRVs that are self-balancing. They cost a little more, but a self-balancing fresh air machine, which automatically adjusts to things that change. So if it adjusts to the cleaning schedule or a filter that's partially blocked, it will adjust itself and help make it work until you get that filter giving it full volume of air. So then particularly those outdoor hoods as well. With unstable times and financial restrictions, where can we get the most housing support per dollar? Stop the degradation of existing housing and improve occupants' health at the same time. If we could extend the life of a home by 10 years, that would have the same effect on the active housing stock for the next 10 years as building a new home. Now, where we're squeezed for new home programs, and that may be worse, hopefully not, but it may be worse, shift your gears to making the active stock work. Training the family on using and maintaining their fresh air machine and getting windows and doors to always work can accomplish that 10 more years lifespan of a house. So let me stop this sharing, jump back where I can see you all. Robert, what's going on? Do we have questions?
Hello, Jan.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like an echo. It was an echo. Robert had to drop.
Yeah, I know. I'm here.
Okay.
Yes. So it was a very interesting session, and
No question in particular?
we have a few comments. So one question is, how does preventive maintenance apply to a person who is just a tenant in the house?
Oh, definitely. Because a tenant in the house, what's the tenant's interest? That his house stays healthy, that he doesn't have diseases in the house, that he doesn't have asthma, things like that. Those things interest a tenant, even though they say the house is not my problem. The house belongs to the band. I'm not going to do anything about it. Now, he's not going to be as proactive as somebody who owns a house, but as a tenant, the reality is he needs to, for instance, change filters and clean off the outdoor hoods that get dusty and get blocked up. So turn off the machine and turn on and clean out the outdoor intake and outtake hoods, because the band's not going to come around every month and clean every hood and clean the filters. So this machine is slowly, not so slowly, sometimes in 3 or 4 months, quit working. If it quits working, your health goes down, the health of the house goes down. This is a no cost effort to keep those things clean. And if they have a small toolkit, they'll find out when they're trying to open the crank on the window and it just doesn't want to open. Well, one, if they wax the window frame and the window itself, so it's wax on wax rubbing together, the wax won't allow the ice to stick. The window will close better and will seal down. Now, a step even further would be if the crank is getting loose, they get wobbly. As soon as they get wobbly, they don't work very well. When they don't work very well, you force it even more, and then they break, and now your window won't even open or close. Well, a tenant could have the interest of doing the simple thing. If he opens the window in good weather and looks outside and tries to turn the crank, he'll see the whole mechanism is shifting on the window because the screws are loose. And if he does the same thing we talk about the doors, we pull out the screw, you'll find out the screw is 3/4 of an inch long. It's a little tiny screw and it's gotten loose in the wood. Put a 2.5 to 3 inch screw in and drive it all the way into the wall of the house. It'll be hard to screw, but when you get it down tight, that thing will never move again. You only need to change 2 screws and it changes the whole thing. I was up in Pecanjicum for a couple of sessions a year ago, and they had the general store, and I talked to the manager at the general store about his hardware section. And the hardware section impressed me. It had things that I didn't expect to see, some halfway decent tools. And it had a little bit of screws and nuts and bolts. But I said, how do you choose? And he says, we don't know. We take a guess, or people ask and we stock it. And so I said, if we really need a whole bunch of 2.5 to 3 inch long number 8 flathead screws that only people are going to buy 3 or 4 at a time, does that interest you? He says, sure, we could put them in little individual bags. We'll still make money off of it, but we'll be selling something that's useful to our customers and useful for the housing of the band. Because they were amazed to think that just a packet of 4 screws could change the whole problem with the front door. So the working with local suppliers, even local hardware stores, if they don't have what you need, if you need special lubricant for locks that is made for locks, because if you put oil in a lock, it'll gum it up. If you put just silicone, it's not too bad, but it's not the best. Use graphite, it's really good, or there are lock sprays that are made to go in, clean the lock, evaporate off, and leave a little silicone behind. So those kind of things can make a big difference. Talk to the hardware store, and then you can promote that. If you're promoting preventative maintenance in the band through the website, the Facebook, the Snapchat. The kids all told me, no, we don't do Facebook anymore, we do Snapchat. But they could get their videos to go over from Snapchat to Facebook, and we can cross-pollinate all of this stuff. So yeah, renters can do an awful lot. Particularly, you're packing all kinds of stuff into the corner because there's not enough room in the house. I want 3/4 of an inch air between any cardboard box and the floor, or any cardboard box and the cold outside wall. Inside walls, no problem. Outside walls are a problem. I'm not asking for a lot of space. I'm saying put 2 sticks down there so that when I put my box against the wall, the air can still flow. If that happens, we don't get mold. You don't lose the junk in the box or the precious stock in the box because of mold, and you don't lose the wall because of mold forming on the drywall, and you don't get the polluted air. Those things the tenants can do themselves, but it has to become an awareness of the whole community. Preventative maintenance needs to become a new value that we value, because we all know we need more housing. Well, for the moment, maybe the best we can do is to make the old housing stretch. Now, even if we still have our new housing projects, if we combine it with a preventative maintenance project at the same time, we're going to get ahead, far ahead of that crisis of not enough houses. Then in the future, we can see how we can deal with that.
Sounds good. Sounds good, Jan.
Somebody says, I
So
find it's the contractors who are in a hurry to take and shortcuts. That's often true. And part of the problem is the contractors don't all understand the consequences of a shortcut. If they don't have the vapor barrier right, then behind where the moisture can go through the barrier, you'll find that you'll get ice and other problems. If they understand that it's a really serious problem, that we can get 30 liters of water in a wall just through an electrical outlet in one winter, and that's in Ottawa where it's relatively warm. Well, those things are blocked by good new construction and doing it carefully. And then they kind of haphazardly put in the HRV. They stick it in, they maybe hook it up and say, turn it on. They don't stop and tell you how to use it. They don't even know sometimes how to use it, or not even sure what it is. They were just told, I got to put this machine in, and they're not sure how to do it. So we may need to do some work on the contracts with contractors to make sure they're aware and up to snuff on the fresh air machines.
so Charles Billy from BC also made a comment. He says, building with hemp prevents mold cut down on maintenance. So
The
that is one.
massive buildings, yeah, we had a whole webinar with Charles, and massive building structures, log cabins, hemp, straw built houses, things like this bring enough mass in that they do absorb a lot of moisture and they let it out in a different season. So they go a long ways toward avoiding particularly that surface condensation on the inside of the house. You're right, Charles. What else we got?
Sounds good. That's pretty much it. That is all the comments.
Graphite spray for locks. If you go to the webinar number 1, you'll see a picture of graphite spray for locks. I found mine in Home Depot. I actually sent my wife to get it when I was up in Pikanchikan, and I couldn't get my key out of the lock of the community center. And I says, we got to fix this. And so she went to the store and they said, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said, my husband said you have it on the shelf. It's in aisle 42, but I can't find it. So they went with two store people. They looked all over and there it was. They just never heard of it. It's a little tiny, like a toothpaste tube, but tiny. It fits in your hand and it's just black graphite. It's messy stuff, but on the day when everything's dry, a little squirt in the lock, you put the key in, move it back and forth, turn it back and forth. All of a sudden, the lock works better. All of a sudden, the key doesn't get blocked and not able to pull out. You know how you wiggle it, you try to get it out, and I want to go, but my key's stuck in the door. Or you can't get your key in the door. So that's what the graphite is about. It's one of the best for a cold climate because it will not attract moisture and it will not freeze up. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, Robert put his in their forms.
Hey, Jan,
Yeah,
we have an
Robert,
interesting question.
yeah.
We have an interesting question. Lois is asking any housing conferences. We organize our First Nation Housing Conference every year. So if you missed it this year, hold on tight. Next year, definitely you should make it a point to be part of it.
Oh, yes. Well, you had quite a few people there this year, I think. What was your attendance? No answer.
100, 400.
400.
I just
400
questioned.
people. Now,
Yes.
understand, for those of you who haven't gone to a conference, for sure it costs money, but 400 people, all involved in First Nation housing, all with the same problems you have. You have them there to talk to at coffee break. You have them there to talk to during and after seminars, and a whole variety of seminars in different streams: technical, administrative, leadership, and all of that backed up by having speakers that come from the funding programs or consultants that help you with your housing. So it's really a crash course. And if you go there prepared with this is what I need answered, you can plan your way through, you can catch people you need to catch, and you can get some serious help for your housing department. So I see, Robert, you put in the chat a link to, for the sharing the feedback, because usually we have a thing that shows up on the screen that you can catch with your smartphone to give us feedback about this webinar and any comments about things you would like to see in other webinars, although this is the last of the series that was built around the conference. But if you click on that site and share your feedback, we would have it up on the screen, but all our technicians are stuck in the storm someplace. And so we're flying by the seat of our pants.